I encourage everyone to take a moment and breathe and take a tea cheers with a Ajiri tea. A Ajiri tea recognizes the beauty in shared stories and shared opportunities. Ajiri sources award-winning tea from Kenya, employs women in the region to handcraft the labels, and sends 100% of the profits back to the region to support orphan education. Save 10% on your order of Kenyan teas and coffee with the code BeautifullyHuman at ajiritea.com. AJIRIT.com. Tea mugs up. Hello and welcome to the Beautifully Human podcast. I'm Nick Sheesby. In this podcast, I speak with beautiful humans from all around the world, sharing with you their incredible stories, revealing the power in every human story, to spread love and humanity to a world that is in desperate need of it, to show that we can all connect in beautiful ways, no matter where we come from or what we look like. What you will find out is that we are all beautifully human. Let's all be beautifully human. Hello and welcome to the Beautifully Human podcast. Today I am hanging out with Lois Letchford, and she just brings such a joy to this interview from the get-go. But she also shares a really hard story about something her son went through that has motivated her life and writing and just to work to change the stigma that is surrounding the situation that happened with her son. I will let her tell you all about it. If you enjoy this podcast, follow on Instagram at the Beautifully Human Podcast and on Spotify. Rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It helps get these conversations out to more people. And as always, enjoy this beautiful conversation. I love to start these off and just ask a very big, broad, overarching question and say, tell me the story of your life, Lois.
Hello, Nick. I'm delighted to be here and share with you. I
am so happy to hear it.
It's so much fun to talk to you about so many things. The story of my life. I actually grew up in Southeast Queensland in Australia. Hot 9 months of the year.
Yeah.
I learned to read words, worked so hard, and I couldn't comprehend. And you don't recognize it, but we had these SRA tests to do. You know, the little reading passages where you read it, you answer the question, and then you self-correct. And I got every single one wrong.
Ugh.
And what just distresses me even now is that no one helped me.
Yeah.
Because they've made a judgment, you're dumb, you're not very smart, that's why. Anyway, despite that, I managed to go on to high school, and in high school, because content becomes important, you learn more things, and reading became more fun. And I learned enough to read and get myself through college and became a physical education teacher. I did that for a few years and then went to London and worked in London, where I met this brilliant man who was on a scholarship from the same area of Australia as I lived. He was on a scholarship working for a company, and we met and married, and he did his PhD in Oxford. And then we had these 3 sons. And that's when the story gets interesting.
All right.
And the first son learns at the speed of light, speaks at the speed of light. The second son belongs to another species. His language is so slow, and his speaking, and you can see even in his thinking, you'd give him a direction and have to think about it. And it would spin around, and eventually you'd get an answer. And that sort of child struggles in school.
Mm.
And I didn't realize he had ear infections from 8 to 18 months and the implication that has on everything in learning.
Oh, yeah.
He wet his pants, he bit his fingernails, he stared into space, can't do a thing, and the teacher shouted at him every day. And that's the start of the disaster for the year. And that was in 1994.
Hmm.
And that changed my life.
Yeah.
So that's the overall that's the beginning.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I know it is. It's such a hard time in life too when you're, like you said, the hardest part is when somebody, like, nobody above you is trying to help you. They just categorize you as dumb. They're like, they're dumb. They're just unhelpable. And it's like, you're here to help me as a teacher. Like, that you're supposed to be the person to educate me and make sure that I'm doing well. And then you just pawn me off as dumb. Like, how am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with that?
We were farmers. My family were farmers. It was a low socioeconomic area. It was a new area at the time. And so what's interesting is the schooling goes with it.
Sure, yeah.
And even today, if you're in a low socioeconomic area, the chances of getting out if you have a struggle are small.
Yeah.
For exactly the same reasons. We've put you in a basket and put the label on it, discard it.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say that hasn't changed, especially here.
I actually think it's got worse because we now want standardized reading programs across the board.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, like you said, it always blows my mind when I hear a kid just be labeled as something or this or that. And I'm like, yes, sometimes someone might be slower at learning, but like, again, that's why you're there. That's why you became a teacher, is to help students. So why it just always blows my mind when it's just, you're just done with that person and not going to give them extra help.
Well, I wrote the book, Reverse to Memoir, after my son graduated with a PhD.
Yeah.
And the driver for my story is that his learning happened by a series of accidents that involved my husband moving. And without that, I don't know what would have happened. And that's what drives me today, that learning should not be an accident. And you tell of your story.
Yeah.
You know, you were bright.
Yeah.
It was easy for you. You're like my elder son.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, I was always a year ahead in math. I would always just like blaze through the book, and then this other kid and I would just go on to the next one. I'd be doing like 6th grade math in 5th grade or whatever it was. And as I was thinking about it, my brother has some dyslexia, and he had a hard time. He had a way harder time than I did in school, and I don't remember specifically, which is terrible, but it wasn't me. So as a kid, I just didn't know about it. It probably wasn't spoken about, but I know he has some troubles with like math and all that stuff because of that.
Nicholas would say, I couldn't do anything by 3rd grade. I wasn't good at anything. Even at mathematics, he had huge trouble, learning to regroup, adding 7 plus 15, that sort of thing. And the teacher said to me, I've done what I can. I can't do any more. Here, you take it. You do it. And I did. But he was incredibly slow, and we had to change the teaching. And then once he got it, he got it.
Yeah.
But
how did you switch it up? What was your method?
Hands-on. You touch everything. You make, you have 15 plus 8, make it 15 plus 8. So you have 15 blocks, and then you have 8 separate ones, and you tell a story about them. And then when you get to 10, what do? You've got to go to the bank.
Okay.
And it was fascinating when I became a teacher and I became a literacy specialist because of my son, the number of children who struggle with that base 10, which is absolutely foundational for mathematics.
Right.
Is, you're in 5th grade and you can't work out that 11 is one bundle of 10 and a 1. It blows my mind. And those foundational things we seem to gloss over rather than going in depth, because the rest of it doesn't make sense, and it just becomes a series of numbers. And who cares about them? Why are they there? I don't know. What's the pattern? I don't know. I just couldn't learn it.
Yeah.
And that's the very thing we drive against. and it stops you, it stops everyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, and see, my son Nicholas is now 33.
Okay.
And after he finished his PhD, I thought, now I can go back to him and say, Nick, tell me what happened in first grade. My son cried.
I bet.
And not a word came from his mouth. He couldn't say anything. And that's when I realized the things that happened, 25 years ago were still in his brain and still impacting him as an adult. And that was gobsmacking to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't forget those things when you're a kid. Like, those things stick with you. I think it's probably a lot of why some people just don't make it in what they want to do is because they have those things. They were told that as a kid and they did give up when they were young. Because if you don't have a parent like you that's going to dig in and become a teacher and give them hands-on learning, I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Yes.
And even if you move past it, you're still going to have those memories if you haven't talked about it or figured out why it was there or whatever it may be. Like it's tough to mental health is incredibly tough to say it very lightly. So that's amazing that he was able to go through and now have a PhD.
Yeah. And what you were saying then, because I remember when Nicholas was 11 and 12, we moved to the United States when he was 11. And I thought, he's enjoying school, life's fun. And you don't even go back. You don't even discuss what happened in first grade.
Right.
So as an adult and a parent, you're just thankful that we're past that, we're through that, we're doing all these other things and just put it on hold. It's fine, without acknowledging, hey, this was a really significant time in your life that we should have dealt with as a family.
Right.
Because it impacts every person in the family. And I don't quite know your audience, but if you've got parents listening, the impact on me as a mother, I mean, it's still there. It's still there.
Yeah.
Why did I let my son stay in first grade? Why didn't I take him out? Why didn't I fight for him harder at that time? Why, and you've got to let the guilt go.
Right. Yeah, because that's not going to help either. The guilt will destroy you. That's one of the hardest things to get through just in general in life is guilt. Especially, I'm not a parent or anything, but I know what kind of guilt that I carry. So, that's a tough one. How are you dealing with that guilt feeling?
Well, I wrote the book and that helped me put the story down and really reflect on the story, and which is why I talk to anyone and everyone about why my story is so powerful, because when children are written off at the age 6, the chances of getting out of that are really, really slim.
Right.
And that's why I wrote it, and to say we can get past it. How am I getting on with the guilt? Nicholas is now receiving counselling.
Okay.
And I think saying that and acknowledging that there was a huge, area of his brain that hadn't been touched since he was 6 years old was really important.
Yeah.
And he's working through that. So, and he has an incredibly supportive wife.
Good.
And that makes a difference too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really awesome.
So finding support, I suppose, is what it is, where it comes from. But finding a wife who is supportive has just been fantastic.
Yeah, that's really amazing. How, once you wrote the book, what was the reaction like? Are you finding, I'm sure you're finding more people coming to you talking about it, and that has to help, just being able to do this, talk to people and about your book, right?
No?
Well,
it's fascinating to me. Dyslexia people sit there and say, it's only a story.
Ah. What?
It's only a story. I look, I've got to tell you, you heard my story growing up. I grew up non-reading. So writing for me is a huge task still. And I would be, if they tested me, I would be what they call word blind.
Okay.
I cannot see what I have written down. I will read back what's in my mind and not what's on the paper. So the only thing I know when I've written it is to put it through Read Please, through the computer program that reads it accurately. And then I can hear it. I can't see it. And then I can go and say, oh, I've got the word if instead of. I've got our instead of out. Simple things like this.
Yeah.
And it becomes important. So for me to write a book without the practice of writing a book was huge. And I needed to meet a young lady who was in a writing class who said, let me help you write it. And she turned my book around from something no one would bother to read because it would have just been too bad, to a story where everyone's got a character and it's got a flow, and you get to the end of the chapter and you've got to know what's happening next. So I'm delighted with what I've written. And I've had 3 editors. I had her, and she was working at the diamond mine because it's a good story anyway.
Yeah.
And then I had the next editor who cut it, and then I had a 3rd editor who polished it.
Man, that's a hell of a process.
And it's costly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, and I don't think people are aware of how much money has gone into the book just to get it to that level. And then they turn around and say, well, it's only a story. So read my book, read it, buy it, read it, write a review.
Yeah.
Understand the depth of writing that has gone to get to that level,
Yeah.
So,
as I asked that, I didn't even think about that aspect of it for you as a writer of that, because I do talk to a lot of people who are writers, and I always ask about the process, and that is, like I said, that's a hell of a process for you to have gotten it to where it's at, and for a beautiful reason, because like I said, I thought there would be a big support group. I figured there were a lot of people out there that would want to read something like that and bond together over it, but I guess I was wrong on that.
on my website, the first thing I have, the free download, is called MAPS, and it's MAPS for many reasons, but it's an acronym, MAPS. The first one is mindset. And the mindset you have when a child struggles with reading is they have to learn to decode. And that is all they see. And they don't want to hear what else has to happen or what that lies in.
Yeah.
It's to me, the whole thing is fascinating because it comes back to your mindset. This is what you've got to do. And if the child doesn't get it, I don't know what you do. Because what I found was when you're doing that with Nicholas, he couldn't get it.
Right.
Get it. So I had to do something different. And it was the different was a total exploration of all sorts of things, of writing, of poetry, of rhyming, and everything. And then instead of having a child who's terrified, I've got this child who we've found this little, gem, and he's just so excited by learning.
Yeah. That's amazing. How has your husband been, since he's got a very mathematical brain, and like you said, he does it for fun? How was he with Nicholas?
My husband's an engineer.
Yeah.
My boys are builders. What was he always doing with them? Building.
Yeah.
Doing puzzles, playing trains. He was always doing those practical things with them.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's aware of the stress it has on the mother, because he says to me, Nicholas got through, what are you worried about?
Right.
We haven't, he's fine. He's got his PhD, he's fine.
Right.
But, and I'm there saying that's a very thin edge that we're on, and that cliff, we could have gone either way. And I worry about my reaction, what I could have said to him. And so what happened was in 1995, my husband had study leave back in the UK, and it was transformative. I had an open slate. It can't do what you expect. Let's throw that out the window and let's just start again. And I started to write these simple little poems for him. And poetry comes with rhyming words, and then you illustrate it. And he was just loving it, and he's remembering it and all this sort of stuff. And I wrote about a poem about Captain Cook, because the double O's come up. So
Sure,
you're
yeah.
not just doing the sound, you're connecting it to a word, connecting it to an experience, connecting it to an emotion, and learning about Captain Cook. Nicholas said, "Can I see Captain Cook's original maps?" And the moment he said that, I knew he didn't have a low IQ, and he had to ask me twice because I didn't believe him.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, this isn't normal. This isn't a normal question from a child with a low IQ. And that was really important, to see the strength and to see the imagination. And it's fascinating to talk to Nicholas now as an adult about what he remembers from that year.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is his memories of it?
This was funny. He said, "I remember the poems you wrote. I remember Mug on a Bug and Windmill on a Hill," because everything we did was then 3D. We didn't just draw the pictures, but we cut out paper and placed it to make a bug. And Nicholas was so excited to do this as a 7. And he said, the Captain Cook, and he learned to read really by exploring the changing map of the world.
Right.
And he said, the mapping taught me to love learning. And then he laughed. He started to giggle. You know, the 7-year-old giggle came. And he said, "I remember you wrote a poem about a witch's spell." And he said, "And I wrote the ingredients." And he's laughing. And it was so funny. In my book, you won't find anything about a witch's spell or the witch's ingredients, because me as the author didn't deem it important enough.
Sure.
As an adult, him looking back, you realise the power of emotion.
Yeah.
Connected with learning. I wrote and my poem wasn't good enough. It was the spin, spot, spell, spit, spun. My poem wasn't good enough. It didn't have the right rhythm. Always the rhyme wasn't there, and I'm making it really tight. It was great for a kid. Nicholas didn't care about that. He cared about writing the witch's spell from a 7-year-old brain. Yeah. You know, what was in it? 3 bird poo, 3 drops.
Right.
The blood of a squashed lizard, you know?
Yeah. Right.
Alien eye.
Yeah. No, that's so funny. That makes a lot of sense though to my brain, where I feel like I would have remembered something like that. Like
Yes.
And like you said, in an adult brain, you're thinking of like the actual learning spots of it, of like, it has to be this rhythm. And then he's like, I remember the poos and the bloods and the everything else, like the toad heads that were in there or whatever it was.
Yes, yes, yes. And
that's so good.
They don't remember the actual ingredients. What you remember is how much fun it was.
Yeah.
And it's like you going back to 6th grade. What do you remember? Math started to get boring.
Yeah.
Maths was no longer fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. It just, I think you hit it on the head before we started recording. But yeah, I think it was just like, it stopped being a challenge. And so I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Sports is challenging, so I'll start doing that or whatever it was. But I mean, even to this day, when I'm doing math and I'm doing quick, like I mix and match, even if I'm trying to do like addition in my mind, I'll do like, I don't know, it'll be like 5 times 5 is 25 plus 10 is 35, and that's like 5 times 7, you know. And I'm like, somehow in my mind it makes sense when I do it, and it's hard to even explain. Yeah. But like, that's just still how my mind works very quickly. Like I'll mix and match like everything to get to what I need to get to very quickly.
And there's multiple roots to it and multiple connections.
Yeah. So that I still have that basic part of math in my head. Nothing like engineering. I have a couple cousins who are engineers, and I remember him telling me about something he was doing engineering wise, and I mean, to him it was like 1 + 1 = 2, and I was sitting there like, you could be speaking Mandarin Chinese to me right now, because it doesn't make, I understand the objective that you're getting towards, but that's it. I know you're trying to fix this machine, but I don't get like the steps to it. It is far beyond me. So that mathematics, just maybe if I had kept with it I could have gotten there, but man, that just blows my mind.
It's got to be fun.
Yeah.
Hasn't it? It's got to be fun. It's got to be seen as a game. What's interesting, Nicholas said, was that I've been doing puzzles all my life. That's why my earliest memory is doing puzzles. And mathematics to me is just like a puzzle.
Yeah.
And you just rejuggle and rejig. I mean, I'm not a mathematician at all.
Yeah.
But, my two sons and my husband, they just eat mathematics.
Yeah. It is. It's a whole different.
And Nicholas.
It's a whole different style of brain, I think.
Yeah.
Or thinking.
Yeah. You go back to mindset, because this was fascinating. Nicholas, failed first grade and he got on and he's learning to read, and he did well in elementary school. Then he goes to middle school, and he was doing a special program in middle school. So he's going to a brand new school. He's got no friends, hardly knows his way around. And he said, I want to do one pre-AP maths class. And it was period 1, day 1 of the new school. And he goes in and the teacher asks them to write on the index cards their parents' names, addresses, telephone numbers in a particular way. This has got to be capitalised and longhand. Nicholas couldn't do it. The stress levels were up here and he couldn't do it. So she tore up his work. She shouted at him and said, you'll never make it in my class if you can't do these simple things, and rah-da-da.
Yikes.
And you'll never do anything with mathematics if you can't make it through my class. He lasted 4 days in that class. We got rid of, we got out and we did the other things. And then the next teacher he meets was in an engineering program, Texas West Engineering, whatever it was called. And she said, Nicholas, why aren't you in my pre-AP science class? I like the way you think. And so it's when you have this fixed mindset, these are the steps you have to do. This is exactly what you have to do. And we're doing it with children.
Right.
Not with, 50-year-olds. We're doing it with children and really limiting so much. And I'd love that teacher to know that he went on and got a PhD in applied mathematics.
Yeah. Yeah. I have those feelings too about certain parts where I just want to be like, see,
yeah,
I did it.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what it should be. So if anything, think about mindset. Think about maybe they can't do that, but they will be able to do other things.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, they can't just rule somebody out. Yeah. Like they're going to have capabilities in a different way. Like everybody learns in a different way. That's just the way it is. Right. All right. I want to switch gears a little bit to when you came to the States, how was it transitioning to when you moved here?
We moved from Brisbane, Australia, which, is subtropical. It's hot. It's a major city. It's glorious. Blue sky, and spring is a massive colour, purple jacarandas, red poinsettias, the list goes on and on and on and on. And we moved to flat, brown Lubbock, Texas.
Ooh, I've been through Lubbock, yeah. I've been there a couple times.
Treeless, waterless. What's the other word? Treeless and flat.
Yeah, very flat.
Everything is brown.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly, within 3 or 4 months of me moving there, I met a mother whose 13-year-old son was non-reading. He'd spent 4 years in a phonics-only reading program. And I said, I think I know what has to happen. I had, by this stage, become a reading specialist. And I said, I think I know what I've got to do. I was employed to teach him over the summer, and I taught him to read. I did more in 3 months than he'd done in 5 years of school. At the end of the summer, the mother wrote to the school district and said, you employ this woman or I sue you. I got employed. Amazing. And believe it or not, living in Lubbock, Texas, Nicholas went from the bottom of the class to the top. And we were there for 8 years. Yeah. So, and the chapter in my book is called The Spring in the Desert. Yeah. That's so true. So I'm very thankful for living in Lubbock, and because, you drive hundreds of miles. Every time we drove, we listened to books on city. For a child who's got a language difficulty, how do you get better? by listening. You've got to have the input before you have the output.
Right.
And
That's
he's
smart.
listening to, the same things as the best reader in the class is reading. So he's got the input, he's getting the language, he's getting the story structure. And he loved it. Loved it. And that was really transformative. And again, you go back to mindset, because that would never have been offered in Brisbane, Australia.
Oh, okay.
Because Nicholas has done really well. He's exceeded expectations.
Right.
It's that mindset is critical. It's how do you see the child?
Right.
And what we didn't know is that Nicholas has the discipline of his father and of the best kids in the world. He was reading for 2 hours a night, 5 and 6 and 7 nights a week. That's not normal.
Right. I wasn't doing that.
No, but he was. And again, it's his drive to succeed. I want to do well. And it's not I want to do well long term. I want to do well today. And this book was so funny. This one. So Lubbock, Texas really changed our lives.
Yeah. I mean, when you said Lubbock, I was like, yeah, that is far different than, I haven't been to Brisbane yet, but I know a lot of people that have been there and are from there, and I was like, that's about as different as you can get in in Western Texas. Where do you live at now?
We're in upstate New York now.
Okay. How do you like it up there?
Oh, the summer is unbelievable. The contrast between summer and winter is just astonishing.
Yeah.
And summer, you go these light greens to the dark, dark, dark green, and you can't put a pinprick between the leaves.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. Winters are a bit long.
Yes, they're tough.
Yes.
That is very true.
Yeah, spring is the hard one, but it's all part of it.
Yeah.
My husband enjoys his work, and that counts for a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very, I think a lot of people are striving for that in life. So that's really nice to have something you enjoy.
And both my sons and my husband have maintained their jobs throughout the pandemic, which is
good.
Yeah. My third son didn't, which is not surprising, but the other two did. And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
To have an income during this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
it was a tough time in a ton of different ways, and I work in the music industry, so it was a pretty decimating year for that industry.
Yes.
So it's coming back, which is nice, but yeah, it was just unlike anything we've ever seen, hopefully ever see again, but
we will.
Yeah.
We will. And it won't be. Last time was 100 years. It was 1918 when we had the last pandemic.
Right.
This one's 2020, and it won't be 50 years. It'll be less.
Yeah.
The changes have been too much on the planet.
Yeah. Very true. All right.
Yeah.
We were talking travel. I always ask this question. COVID restrictions aside, we're all wide open to travel wherever we may want to. If I came to you and I had a plane ticket to anywhere in the world, Lois, where would you fly to?
Iguazu Falls.
All right. Where's that?
To South America. I'm going to say Paraguay.
Okay.
I don't think that's right. It's not Paraguay. It's not Uruguay. It's Argentina. It's Brazil. It's on a corner of all three.
Okay.
And we went down there. My husband had a conference in Brazil, and Iguazu is just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.
That's so cool. Yeah, any waterfalls that I've seen, and the biggest one so far that I've seen is Niagara Falls, and it is just mind-blowing.
Yes.
Like the power. And I love water. I was always the first kid in the water when I was young, and I was just like, I still love to swim. Like last summer, we went on a big road trip to kind of stay socially distanced and 10 miles from anybody. So any body of water, I was like, I have to jump in it. And I'm a Pisces, so it's a water sign. So it makes sense, but I also understand the power of water. I mean, I've surfed before, and so anytime you get spun dry in a wave, you can feel the power that it has.
Oh.
But then to see a waterfall, it was like, holy shit, that is crazy.
It's mind-blowing. My husband and my son and my daughter-in-law went to Victoria Falls.
Ah, okay.
My daughter-in-law was doing a PhD and she had research there. So they went up and saw the Victoria Falls, which are, I think, higher, but you've got to get on top to see the falls. And then you get the steam and the vapor and all that, so you don't see them. But Iguazu is just mind-blowing.
That's cool.
And Eleanor Roosevelt said, poor Niagara. And the bird life.
Yeah.
It's just staggering.
Yeah.
It's, anyway, yeah. So
I think bird watching is a very underrated hobby.
I live in upstate New York, right on the Hudson River.
Oh, perfect.
We have bald eagles.
Cool.
Fly past. We have a nest in the next island. We have peregrine falcons.
Whoa, that's amazing.
And they sit in the tree. So we sit and we bird watch from our back balcony. And the Canada geese come regularly and they have their babies here. But just watching the bird life is fantastic.
That's so cool.
Red hawks, we see them fairly regularly. And the vultures.
Yeah, we've got a lot of those down here. Those savage. Nature's just savagery when you watch it.
Well, the vultures, I didn't realize the power and the importance of them in nature because they're the cleaner ups,
True.
And when you take out a species from nature, what it does to the rest of the environment. And I belong to a bird magazine, and they were looking at the big vultures that are disappearing from Africa and the impact on the environment. It's horrendous.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I didn't even think about it that way because I think about it a lot when I see I'm driving on the highway and there's a poor animal that's been hit or didn't make it and they're just there. And I'm like, what a way to go. You're just like got hit by a car first off, which sucks. And then you're just sat on the side of the road. Yeah. So yeah, I'm in it for vultures actually. I like that they help clean up for the poor other ones that didn't make it.
And then we have to be careful what we're putting into the food system because many were dying because of the poisons within the animals that they were eating. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I don't eat animals.
Yeah.
I just take it out of the equation.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
But
so bird life up here is fantastic.
Yeah. My partner and I went to northern Norway and we drove this really amazing road like along a fjord, and it was wintertime, so the birds weren't there obviously, but we saw so many signs for like bird watching, like go this way, and I was like, man, I bet it is just spectacular up there in the summertime. And I always just thought like it's so cool. Like I don't really know what people think about bird watching. I don't talk about it a lot to people, but I'm like, it's such a beautiful, just calming activity to do, especially when you're seeing, like, you have such a good array of birds up there. That's so cool.
Well, they're a thermometer of the world too.
Yeah, that's a cool way to look at it too. I love it. Also, I was thinking when we were talking about falls, I'm just thinking about, in my random head right now, was how people went over Niagara Falls in a barrel.
Oh.
Like, that just blows my mind. I'm just thinking of putting myself there, and I'm like,
crazy.
How would you do that? Like, I like extremes in life, but there's just no possible way that would be something I'd get up there and fathom to do.
Yeah. We've traveled a lot. So, I mean, because of my husband and his work and things, so I felt really privileged to see a lot of the things that I've been able to see and do. And Iguazu would be one of the top.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And living up here is good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. What's the most surprising place that you've been to in your travels?
Churchill, Canada.
Okay. Where is that?
On the edge of Hudson Bay.
Okay.
To see the polar bears.
Cool.
That's
amazing.
Yes, that was staggering. And I heard about them when we were living in Australia. because, the polar bears are now walking into the towns, and they have bear jail, bear incarceration.
That's the most Canadian thing I've ever heard.
to discourage them from coming into these little communities.
Oh my God.
So I went and saw them, and they're just mind-boggling.
That's
And
incredible.
we have a cat. We have a cat here who's they're a stray, and is complaining about the confined 2-bedroom apartment.
Of course.
And then you think about all the other animals that we put into zoos.
Oh, I know.
And, a polar bear walks hundreds of miles. Elephants walk hundreds of miles. And we confine them to this. Human race has we have a lot to answer for.
Yes, we have a day of reckoning and karma that's coming to slap us. Yeah, I have a hard time with zoos. I do know that they do conservation, which they should for what's happening. But we met a woman in Boise. It was a friend of a friend here in Nashville, and so we got she gave us kind of a backstage tour of the zoo and kind of told us the conservation that the Boise Zoo was doing, which I liked seeing it better that way because I at least had some of the knowledge of what they were giving back. But what really stuck out to me, I hadn't been to a zoo in a long time just because of that fact that I really don't like seeing these animals in confinement. I saw these wild African dogs, and key word obviously being wild. And I mean, these were some of the coolest looking dogs ever. Like, if you're walking down the street with that dog, people would be like, what the hell is that dog? That dog looks amazing. But I have to imagine those things are just savage, running around the wild, just having a blast. And they were, it was we'll call it quote unquote big for the zoo.
Yes.
But I was like, dude, these dogs are meant to just be flying all over the place, like just running around. And I left and I was like, I did get to see the good that Boise was doing, but I also was like, it just made me really sad. All of them did, but those wild dogs, I'd never seen them before, and I was fascinated, and I thought they were just gorgeous, but yeah, it bummed me out. So I'm like, I don't want to do zoos anymore. If I can't see them in the wild, then I'll see them online.
And we can see everything online today.
Yeah.
So, I better be quiet.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard, isn't it? Getting that balance. Because if they were just in the wild, people would say, why? Oh, I can't see them, it doesn't matter. I mean, we understand what we're trying to do, but there's a huge cost.
Yeah.
Huge cost.
Yeah.
Well, at least we're not killing them as much at the rate we were.
Is that the better part? Like, at least we're not just wiping them off the earth. Like, I don't know. I think if you want to see them, go on a safari and find them.
Yeah.
Earn it. You don't deserve, I'm safe. All right. I have, before we go too far down that topic, I have 2 questions for you. First question is, what would you want the world to know about you, Lois?
That I'm persistent, that we can teach children to read. Not only we can, that we must teach children to read, and there's more than one way to do it. That's what I'd like the world to know, that it's so important. And this I've written the book, but more importantly, because I struggle with writing, I've connected with a Professor Tim Brzezinski from Kent State in Ohio, to write an academic paper. And it's coming out in the Reading Teacher, and it has been called a seminal paper on text integration that hasn't happened in 35 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I do know things.
Yeah.
So look me up, check me out. That's what I want the world to know, that there's more to reading than meets the eye. And believe in that little child who you think's got nothing going for them.
Yeah.
And if they're one like you, challenge them.
Right. Challenges. Yes. Yeah. I love that. I love all that. That's such an important message for don't leave them behind, but also challenge the kid who might just be acting out, because that's kind of what I started to do. I started class clown type type behavior, and it was just because I wasn't challenged. So I think that's an incredibly important message. And final question for you is, if you had the ear of everybody in the world, what would you say to them?
The ear of everyone in the world, again, believe in the child. We want them on this planet for 60 or 70 years. We can improve the child's lot, or we can destroy it. Yeah. So let's make a choice to believe in that child and say they can. We have got the knowledge. We can do it.
Yeah. 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 I mean, they're literally our future. So why we want to leave any of them behind? Yes. We have a lot of reckoning to do in this world. So we need every child, every good person in the world to be a part of that massive reckoning that needs to happen. So don't leave them behind. I mean, good Lord.
That's right. Don't leave them behind. And don't make judgments on them.
Yeah.
Let's stop the judgments and really just see them as little people.
Yeah.
Give them the best opportunity.
Yeah, they're little humans. They're soaking up everything. They're going to remember if you treat them like shit. They're going to, that might stick with them their whole life, and that could be a little bit on you, a lot of bit on you. So treat them well.
Yeah, we have the potential to do anything.
Yeah.
Nick, this has been such a delightful conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a beautiful way to start the morning off.
It is.
I've loved having this chat with you, and I appreciate you and your time and your patience with me this morning. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing. And my book is Reverse to Memoir.
Yes.
Read a copy, write a review, like your channel.
Yes. Yeah, all of that. But yeah, definitely check out the book. I'm excited to read it. I think it's a very beautiful beautiful part of your persistence that you put that out and that you're fighting for that, because like we've said, it is such an important part of our future is to have these kids not be left behind. So yeah, it
is perfect. Well, thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Enjoy Iceland, and put a Gasu on your bucket list.
Okay. Yes, I wrote it down. I always write everybody's down so that I can live that. And I'll look it up today, and then that'll be on my list.
Yes, enjoy. Thank you.
You're so welcome. See you.
Thank you for listening to the Beautifully Human podcast. To hear more beautiful stories from beautiful humans, follow us on Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at the Beautifully Human Podcast. Peace signs up.